The last we read of our book, Out of the Dust, was the chapter Spring 1935. So you can assume that our next chapter will be called Summer 1935, as summer comes after spring. So that's where we are. Summer 1935.
Okay, first thing is first, I would like for you to read the poem titled The Dream, and we will consider these questions after you do that. So here's the poem. Take a look and pause to read.
You just specifically think about themes. How are the themes in these poems shifting? Compare and contrast these themes as you listen to me reading them. So we'll start off with the poem, The Dream. Take a close look at how differently it's written than other poems, right? This will be important. The Dream. Piano, my silent mother. I can touch you. You are cool and smooth and willing to stay with me. Stay with me. Talk to me. Uncomplaining, you accept the cover to your keys, and still you make room for all that I place there. We close our eyes together, and together find that stillness like a pond when the wind is quiet and the surface blazes. Gazing unblinking at the blue sky, I play songs that have only the pattern of myself in them, and you hum along, supporting me. You are the companion to myself, the mirror with my mother's eyes. July 1935.
Alright, so you will agree with me that this poem looks a little bit different than other poems, yet the topic is pretty similar to the topic that we have gotten in past poems. I want you to consider, who is Billy Joe talking to throughout this poem? Who is the you that Billy Joe refers to? You will answer this question on your Word document and then move on to this other one. How does she feel about this person? Remember, person is in quotes. What sort of relationship does she sound like she has with this quote-unquote person? Which words and phrases from the poem The Dream suggest to you that that's how she feels about it? What words, phrases give you those hints? Now that that is done, I want us to reread The Dream from this chapter and also go back to a poem called On Stage, which we read in the first chapter of this book. So The Dream it's on page 193, and On Stage comes early on page 13. I'll show you these poems, and as you look and reread these poems, this is what you will be answering, so keep this in mind. The words in these two poems are arranged very differently from all the other poems in the novel. Why? What do the words on the page look like to you? What do they resemble? What do the words on the page resemble? What topic do the poems share? Again, here's the poem The Dream, page 193 and 194. And here is the poem On Stage, page 13 and 14. Just as we've been doing in the past, and now that you are fully done with answering the previous question, we want to consider a theme once again. I want us to remember how we used TPcast and that chart where we considered the title very closely of the poem, what that told us. We considered the language, the figurative language, what kinds of words were used to try to get us to feel something. We considered the topic, the plot, right? What was it? What was the poem? What the story that the poem was telling us was all about. And so in doing all of these things, we came up with theme statements, and we did so for many things that we've read, but the most recently you did it with the poem called Hope. So I want us to do it to come up with theme statements, this time without going through the whole chart. Do it with these two poems. Come up with a theme statement for both of the poems, The Dream and On Stage. Think about in what ways do these poems express how Billy Joe's life has changed over the course of the novel. You will be coming up with the one-sentence theme statement for both of these. Really consider how her life has changed, what message the author is willing to send us, is wanting to send us with this poem. I remind you that there is not one right answer, so each of these poems could communicate more than one theme statement. So just as long as it's a message that you feel the author is wanting to send with this poem, then go ahead and write those two theme statements down. Having come up with your two theme statements and answered this question on your Word document, how Billy Joe's life has changed over the course of the novel, we are ready to move on. We're going to continue reading Summer 1935 until the end.
Then there's Midnight Truth. I am so filled with bitterness. It comes from the dust. It comes from the silence of my father. It comes from the absence of Ma. I could have loved her better. She could have loved me, too. But she's rock and dust and wind now. She's carved stone. She's holding my stone brother. I have given my father so many chances to understand, to reach out, to love me. He once did. I remember his smile, his easy talk. Now there is nothing easy between us. Sometimes he takes notice of me, like coming after me in the dust. But mostly I'm invisible. Mostly I'm alone. My father's digging his own grave. He calls it a pond, but I know what he's up to. He is rotting away like his father, ready to leave me behind in the dust. Well, I'm leaving first. July 1935. What does she mean by that? Out of the dust. We'll find out. This is not a dream. There's no comfort in dreams. I try to contain the ache as I leave my bed. I try to still my heart as I slip from my room with my kerchief of dimes. Moving slowly down the stairs, I cross through the kitchen, taking only some biscuits, and leave my father's house. It's the middle of the night, and I hear every sound. Inside me, outside me, I go, knowing that I'll die if I stay, that I'm slowly, surely smothering. I walk through the calm night under the stars. I walk to where the train stops long enough for a long-legged girl to latch on, and as my heart races, I feel the earth tremble beneath me, and then the sound of sharp knives, metal against metal, as the train pulls up to the station. Once I might have headed east to Mr. Roosevelt. Now I slip under cover of darkness inside a boxcar. and let the train carry me west, out of the dust. August 1935. We have Gone West next. Gone West. I am stiff and sore. In 2 endless days on this train, I have burned in the desert, shivered in the mountains. I have seen the camps of Dust Bowl migrants along the tracks. There was one girl. I saw her through the slat in the boxcar. She stared up at the passing train. She stood by the tracks watching, and I knew her. August 1935. Something lost, something gained. He climbs into my car. He's dirty and he has a sour smell. His eyes are ringed by the soil that comes from riding trains, but there's a deeper shadow to those eyes, like ashes, like death. He needs a hair comb and a shave and a mending needle applied to his pants. He speaks to me. Where you from, miss? He wants to know. He shows me a picture of his family, a wife, 3 boys. The photograph is all he carries. That and the shredding, stinking clothes on his back. I feed him 2 of the stale biscuits I've been hoarding and save the rest. I'll be hungry tonight, what with giving my day's biscuits away. But I can see the gaunt of hunger in his cheeks. He asks if I have water and I shake my head, my tongue thick with thirst. He eats the biscuits. He doesn't care if they're caked with dust. He finishes eating and crumbs stick to his mustache. He's staring hard at me and his eyes water. I've done it again, he says, taken food from a child. I show him my cloth bag with more biscuits. At home, he said, I couldn't feed them, couldn't stand the baby always crying, and my wife, always that dark look following me, couldn't take no more. Lost our land, they tractored us all out, so we had to leave. Rented a while, then moved in with Lucille's kin. Couldn't make nothing grow. I nodded. I know. Excuse the noise. We talked as the train rocked, as the cars creaked, as the miles showed nothing but empty space. We talked through the pink of the setting sun and into the dark. I told him about Ma dying. I told him about my father and how the thing that scared us both the most was being left alone. And now I'd gone and left him. I told him about the piano and Arlie Wanderdale and how I wasn't certain of the date, but I thought it might be my birthday. But he was sleeping by then, I think. He was like tumbleweed. Ma had been tumbleweed too, holding for as long as she could, then blowing away on the wind. My father was more like the sod, steady, silent, and deep, holding on to life with reserves underneath to sustain him and me and anyone else who came near. My father stayed rooted, even with my tests and my temper, even with the double sorrow of his grief and my own. He had kept a home until I broke it. When I woke, the man was gone, and so were my biscuits. But under my hat, I found the photograph of his family and the wife and 3 boys. Maybe the photograph was left in trade for the biscuits. Maybe it was a birthday gift, the one thing he had left to give. The children in the picture were clean and serious, looking out with a certain longing. The baby had his eyes on the back of the photograph. The baby had his eyes. On the back of the photograph in pencil was the address to his family in Moline, Kansas. First chance, I'd send the picture back, let his wife know he was still alive. I got off the train in Flagstaff, Arizona. A lady from a government agency saw me. She gave me water and food. I called Mr. Hardley from her office and asked him to let my father know I was coming home. August 1935. Homeward bound. Getting away, it wasn't any better, just different and lonely, lonelier than the wind, emptier than the sky, more silent than dust, piled in drifts between me and my father. August 1935. Met. My father is waiting at the station and I call him Daddy for the first time since Ma died, and we walk home together, talking. I tell him about getting out of the dust and how I can't get out of something that's inside me. I tell him he is like the sod and I am like the wheat, and I can't grow everywhere, but I can grow here, with a little rain, with a little care, with a little luck. And I tell him how scared I am about those spots on his skin, and I see he's scared too. I can't be my own mother, I tell him, and I can't be my own father, and if you're both going to leave me, well, what am I supposed to do? And when I tell Daddy so, he promises to call Doc Rice. He says the pond is done. We can swim in it once it fills. And he'll stock it with fish too, catfish, that I can go out and catch off an evening and fry up. He says I can even plant flowers if I want. As we walk together, side by side, in the swell of dust, I am forgiving him. Step by step, for the pail of kerosene. As we walk together, side by side, in the soul-deep dust, I am forgiving myself for all the rest. August 1935. We remember she is probably forgiving herself for her role in the accident and all of that.
Now that we're completely finished with summer 1935, the exit ticket that I want you to complete, once again on your Word document, is what is the single most significant change Billy Joe undergoes in this chapter? Answer this question in a well-formed sentence. For example, in this chapter, Billy Joe blank and blank. This would be an example of a well-formed sentence, but you're answering what is the single most significant change that Billy Joe undergoes in this chapter. She undergoes many changes, but what do you think is the most significant, the most important one? In the last part of this lesson, you answered a question about the change that Billy Joe undergoes. What change is the biggest change that she goes through? Now, we're going to continue working with this same chapter. I want you to reread an assigned poem. So I'll give you a couple options to pick from. This time I will not actually assign one to you. I'll have you choose. I won't give you. The last time you filled this out, it was for the poem Hope. This time you will get a couple options and you pick the one that you want to work on. You'll put the title here in the line that it provides at the top, in that blank, and then you will work through the chart one more time, telling me what the title tells you, what prediction can you make about the poem based on the title, what really happens in the poem from beginning to end, connotation, any figurative language that is used, the tone in the poem. Once again, if there are any shifts in attitude, so if it starts having some type of attitude and then later on the attitude changes into another kind, tell me what attitude changes, what shifts. And so then you'll tell me about the title. And one more time, you'll think about why do you think the title is so important to this poem, and then what is the theme statement, your themes, the main message that the author wanted to send, that the poet wanted to send to the reader. that'll be a sentence here at the bottom. So pick your poem and do that. Pick just one of the following poems to complete TP Cast. You can choose between Midnight Truth, Out of the Dust, Something Lost, Something Gained, and Homeward Bound. As for the last part of this lesson, we are going to answer this particular exit ticket. Now, we have worked with theme statements quite a bit now, so this time I am giving to you the theme for the poem Met. The poem Met involves, the theme in the poem Met involves the importance of forgiveness. So if I had to put that into a theme statement, I would say it would sound something like, forgiveness is important in life, or it is important to be forgiving in life. Something along those lines. Now that I've given you that theme statement, I will tell you that many poems in the book Out of the Dust actually have the same theme, have a similar theme. Just like Met may have other themes and other poems may have other themes too, I can say that one of them is for sure forgiveness. So it is important to be forgiving. Knowing that, why is the idea of forgiveness important to the story? So I want you to answer, how is forgiveness, or why is forgiveness important to the whole story Out of the Dust, to Billy Joe's story? Include details from the actual story in your response, which means I want you telling me parts of the book that you remember that really tell you or tell us that forgiveness is important. So go ahead and answer that question to end this lesson. Why is the idea of forgiveness important to the story? Include specific details from the story in your response. Having done that, in this lesson you examined the themes of several poems, and you also identified how the theme of forgiveness is particularly important to the story Out of the Dust. Congratulations.